This is a 1991 Toyota Crown Royal Saloon G, and I've brought it today to the warehouse to show you guys Japan's most luxurious car of 1991. Now, I already know what a lot of you guys are thinking. Well, the Century exists, right? Well, save that thought for later and wait till you see the interior because you might be surprised. So what exactly is a Toyota Crown? The Crown is a luxury sedan that's been produced by Toyota since 1955. And as a matter of fact, they're still making the Crown today, although it is a far cry from what you see here. This is an 8th generation Royal Saloon G, and it's the top spec model for this series. Toyota used this car back in the day as sort of a test bed to try out all of their latest technology and features. And some of these features you would never expect from something that looks like this, a total grandpa spec car. Well, let's take a look inside here and you'll see what I'm talking about. The inside of this particular Crown is this brown on brown color scheme, and continuing on with the grandpa theme, you can see the seat doilies here. But here's where things start getting crazy. Let me start it up. You can take a look here. It's got a digital dash. And take a listen to the engine. Now, it's already pretty quiet, but if I shut the door, take a listen. You are completely isolated in this cabin. Now, of course, the digital cluster here is super cool, but watch what happens when I press this button here. You can see it's got a tachometer in it, but if you want to simplify things, you just press this button and it gets a completely different display just showing the speed. Further still, if you look at the gas gauge here, you can see we're pretty low on fuel here, but if you want to know exactly how much fuel you have left in the tank, you press this button here and you can see it zooms in for you so you know exactly how much fuel you have left. Moving on to the steering wheel, it is this leather wrapped wheel, and you can see here it is telescopic and it tilts up and down. This thing also has power mirrors, but not only that, if you press this button, you can see they retract. Again, we're talking about a car from 1991 here. This right here, you can actually dim the gauges, which was pretty standard procedure for back in the day. To the left of the steering wheel is one of my favorite features. Take a close look at the vent here. When I push it, you can see it oscillates side to side. This is a swinging air vent that was exclusive to these cars back in the day, and they were meant more for your backseat passengers in the event that they don't have their own air conditioning system. And we'll get to that here in a few minutes. Now, of course, with this being 1991, it doesn't have a CD player, but it does have a very trick cassette and radio setup. Let me show it to you. To start, we're going to power it on by pressing down on the buttons. I like how this is laid out like a keyboard. You can see here it's got different modes. If you press the acoustic button, it goes from pops, rock, vocal, classic, jazz. But one of my favorite features is the volume button. You can see right here, there's nothing right here, but if you push down on this, the volume knob comes out and you can adjust it there. Next to it, you have your adjustments for your air conditioning. You can see it adjust on this little digital screen where the air is positioned. And of course, your fan controls are right below that. And speaking of the AC system, it's actually pretty trick. You can adjust it in half-degree increments, and of course, this is in Celsius. Now, this is going to be a common theme in this car. The driver has controls for things like the rear heat, and also down here, the rear seat adjustment. And that's because this car was meant to be chauffeured in by a driver. At any rate, moving right below here, you've got this storage compartment with a pop-out storage compartment for more cassettes. And just above that, again, because it's the 90s, you have a massive ashtray. Now moving down to the shifter area, you have this massive leather-wrapped shift knob, again, super luxurious. But then you've also got these buttons down here. Let me show you what they do. So as you can read right here, this is actually your adjustment for the air suspension. There is a compressor and air suspension on this thing that you can adjust the suspension from normal to a high ride height. And that's also mirrored up here in the display. There's also a couple of drive modes down here as well. Above that, you've got some really unique storage with this double hinge design on the center console, as well as your standard flip side storage. But the glove box over here on the passenger side is actually really cool too. There's quite a bit of things going on over here. First off, you have a trunk opener over here. There's also one on the driver's door. If you look right here, you can see there's a mirror, and that's because up here, there's not a mirror on the sun visor. But there's one more thing here, and that's hidden storage underneath the main storage area. A pretty unique glove box, all things considered. Now, moving back up to these sun visors up here, they're pretty standard. Again, there's no mirror on these whatsoever, but one of my favorite features about the whole car, you see this little area of light shining through right above the mirror? Well, Toyota thought of that, and they put this tiny little flip down visor that covers up that area so you have total blockage of the sun. It's one of those things that only Japanese auto manufacturers are thinking about. Moving further back, again, there's adjustments for the seat on the side of the front passenger here. Now that's again for the driver to adjust for their passengers. All right, now let's get out and get to the back. The back seat area is definitely the place to be in this car. Firstly, let's look at the door. Not only do you have window controls, but also your seat controls. This moves the seat back forwards and backwards. Also, for the person sitting here behind the front passenger, if you want to, you can move their seat up out of the way if no one's sitting there. Going back to the fact it was the 90s, both doors have ashtrays. Now moving down into the floor mats are actually the shag material that's super thick, and it's got the Crown logos everywhere. On that note, nowhere in this interior does it say Toyota. Toyota kind of wanted the Crown to be its own line of super luxurious cars. But back to the back here, you've got your own air conditioning system. Again, that mitigates the front swinging vents. And not just that, you can adjust the temperature, fan speed, everything from back here. And below that, you've even got audio controls which take over precedence over the front. And the vents for the AC are actually up here next to your reading lights. So they're super close to your face and very comfortable. Also, the sound system in here is top notch, and you have Toyota's super woofer system. But I believe I've saved the best for last, because if we look in the very back here, there is a feature right here past this that I've not found on any other Japanese car. And that is a cooler box. This keeps your drinks, beverage of choice, cold for you on long drives. So now with all that said, hopefully now you can see where I mean when this thing really does compete for the luxury Crown title with the Century. Let's turn this off for a minute and take a look under the hood. This particular Crown comes with a 7M GE inline-6 engine making around 200 or so horsepower. But here's one of the cool things. You could option this with a supercharged inline-6. You could also get this with a 5-speed manual. Or possibly even better, you could get a turbo diesel version too. Lastly, Toyota made sure there was an engine option for everyone because they also included a V8 as an option too. Well, there's one last part you haven't seen yet, and that's the trunk. Now, again, you can get into it by pressing this button here, but there's another way. There's no keyhole on the trunk whatsoever, but Toyota hid it behind this badge here. And if you just twist, it unlocks it, and when you pull it out, the logo goes right back, and you can see the trunk area is huge. Behind here is the refrigeration unit for your cooler box, but other than that, this is a massive trunk. I've got my biggest camera bag back here, and it's barely taking up any room. This thing for sure could fit 4 or 5 sets of golf clubs for reference. But now that I've shown you just about everything on this car, why don't we take it out on the road and see how this thing gets along driving. Alrighty, here we are driving the Toyota Crown Royal Saloon G from 1991. This thing is supremely comfortable, and we're moving right now, and as you can hear, there's not much to hear. This thing is just so incredibly comfortable. If you've ever ridden in an old Buick or an old Lincoln, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about when I say this thing floats down the road. It's because of the air suspension system in this thing. It's just so cushy as you're going down the road. Now, as I turn onto this main road, the 7M engine that's in this thing is not that bad, not too decent of a slouch or anything like that. It's actually got plenty of power down low, lots of torque, and I think that's where this thing really shines. It's not meant to go super, super fast. You know, that's what the more supercharged version, the manual version. This thing, grandma or grandpa spec, really quiet engine, really smooth down low torque. That's what this thing is really all about. Now again, you could get it optioned with a supercharged inline 6, a turbo diesel, or even the V8. As it stands, I believe this thing does 0 to 60 or 100 kilometers an hour in right around 9 to 10 seconds, which is not fast, quick, or anything like that, but it knows how to get out of its own way at very least. Now, the supercharged version of this, you could also get it with a 2JZ engine, actually is supremely quick. For its time, 0 to 60, I believe, was taken care of in something like 6.5 seconds or something like that. A definite improvement over this one here. I love how this thing also flies under the radar. It really does look like an old Buick in a lot of ways. Now we're gonna take this thing down some construction zone. You can see some of the construction cars behind me here. This road is currently getting repaved. It's actually pretty bad. So this will be a great test of the air suspension to see just how much it absorbs. You can probably see it on camera as we go over some of this stuff too. So again, you can hear everything outside. This thing is so smooth as we're going down the road. It is incredibly quiet. This is whisper quiet. I'm not having to yell on this video. This is supremely nice. And here we go over some bumps. Again, the road is very, very uneven, but you guys can see this thing's just eating it up, and the car is just bouncing back and forth all the way down here. Super, super comfortable, really smooth ride. I absolutely love this thing. This thing is just so nice. I owned an old Buick. I had a 1978 Buick Riviera at one point, and this car reminds me so much of that. Just, you have all of this room, got headroom up here, and it just floats down the road effortlessly with tons of down low torque. This thing is so nice to just have as a daily driver car. I can see why people loved it so much in Japan, especially old people. Like, just look at the seat doilies. Seat doilies, it doesn't get more grandma and grandpa than that, right? And apparently mob bosses like this for several reasons like that as well. Just like supreme comfort, getting chauffeured around. I can definitely see some mob boss or something like that being pushed around in one of these things. But yeah, genuinely, I don't have any complaints about this car. It's smooth, quiet, decent on its feet, and it has quite a bit of body roll going into the corners, so going on a very spirited drive might make your passengers feel a little queasy at their stomachs, but other than that, just riding down a normal highway or road, this thing is supreme. And as mentioned in the beginning of this video, I've actually driven a couple of Centuries, one of which was a V12 model with all the gadgets and gizmos on it, and I'll say this, this thing is up there with the Century as far as just everything. The only thing the Century really does have going for it that this car does not is the sound isolation. The deadening in the Century is just that much more. It is on an entirely different playing field. You can shut the doors and not hear anything. We can be parked right next to this highway, and you shut the doors, you won't hear a thing outside of the car. It is kind of eerie how it does that kind of sound deadening, but this car is not that far off on the whole scale. It's still very, very nice. It's just not as nice as the Century in that regard. But hey, the Century was a way more expensive, way bigger car back in the day. This was kind of like the mid-range option for luxury cars back in the day for Toyota. Overall though, I really like this car, and as a daily driver or otherwise, this thing makes a perfect road trip machine. Well guys, that just about does it for everything you'll find on this beautiful Toyota Crown Royal Saloon G. This thing is currently available. I'll put in the comments if it's not, but yeah, if you guys want to check it out, I'll leave a link to this thing down in the description so you guys can check it out for more information if you'd like to possibly have this for yourself. But if you like seeing cars like this, be sure to subscribe here. I do show off quite a few obscure, cool, rare Japanese cars like this one. In the meantime, take care. We'll see you in the next one. Later.